Well, hey guys, welcome to the forecast today. Before we get into it, we're going to talk about some historic March snowstorms. And some of you probably remember these. March 12th through the 15th, 1993. Who could forget that if you were living in these areas? Some places close to 3 feet of snow with this, what was known as the superstorm of 93 or the storm of the century. Another storm more recently here, this was in 2017, the 12th through the 15th as well, dumping quite a bit of snow across central parts of New York, even down into Pennsylvania. A lot of New England got hammered with snow here with well over a foot of snow in many of these areas. We also picked up some decent snow here too, back across the Great Lakes area up into the northern plains, but not as much as we saw in New England. Another storm further to the west. This one was in late March, the 23rd through the 26th, dumping snow not only in the Rockies, but out across the plain states, the northern plains here across South Dakota, North Dakota, places here picking up close to 2 feet of snow. And then into the northeast, this was a more concentrated snow, especially for southern New England. More recently, you guys may remember this one, the 3rd and the 4th of 2019, close to 2 feet of snow in many of these areas. And then back in 2013, this was a widespread snow event moving across the country from the 23rd all the way to the 28th. Some of these areas picking up a foot to a foot and a half of snow. Looks like some of the heaviest snow with this one was here across parts of Indiana, Illinois, back into Missouri. A pretty far south track with this one. Of course, the superstorm of 93, that one's pretty tough to beat. So do any of you guys remember any of these storms, or what's the most memorable March snowstorm that you can remember? Not just any time, but we're talking about March. Those are the ones, right, that get you. Let me know below. I can't wait to read your comments. Now, if you're hoping for a snowy forecast as we head into Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, you're going to be sorely disappointed. All the cold air is really locked up here, but there are some changes coming. This is part of the change. It will move into the Pacific Northwest next week. It's going to bring some heavy snow across not only the Pacific Northwest, but even further south into the Four Corner states into early into the middle part of next week. But I think it will also potentially bring some severe weather across parts of the South. This is something to keep an eye on heading into next week for sure. And I think this is also interesting. Now, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say, listen, it's going to turn extremely cold in March, but I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't show you what I'm seeing. Here in the upper atmosphere, we're seeing a stratospheric warming event. Typically, when you see these, you'll see cold, usually a week or two after this happens. It's interesting to look at some of the longer range models trying to indicate that we will see some blocking up around Greenland around the middle of next month. What does that mean? Well, if you had to say winter is over, I don't know if I would throw my cards in just yet. Sure, March is going to be warmer than January, but March could be interesting. That's all I'm going to say. If you want to hang your hat on winter's over, that's fine. I think it depends on where you live. Historically, we've seen March surprises. You never know. No surprises, I think, though, as we move through the next couple of days. Like I said, rain starting to move east. So by Thursday night, we've got the precipitation now moving into New England. Find where you are on the map. We're going to walk through the next couple of days here. Rain across the south, and that will stick around as we head into Friday, too. Across New England, though, cold enough for snow here. We're quiet across most of the west and also across the central part of the United States, but rain across the south. That will continue through the day Friday. Eventually, we'll start to dry out here as that cold front pushes off to the east, and then we turn chilly behind it as a strong northwest flow starts to develop. A disturbance will also move through, looks like most of the Ohio Valley into the Appalachians, and once it moves into the mountains, there could be a little bit of accumulation here, and then we dry out and we stay cold. Warm temperatures, though, back here across the central United States, all the way up into the plains, above normal temperatures. Cold, though, here in the Northeast. It's going to be a chilly weekend. Just get ready for it. If you're thinking spring this weekend here, nah, it's going to feel just like winter, unfortunately. Not a lot of snow, though, either. If you're hoping for cold and snow, you're not going to get both. Back across the west, though, this is where things get really interesting. Before we get too far, let's talk about that snow in the Northeast. It looks light here from Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, back into the higher elevations of New York. A couple of inches with this system as it moves through. And again, across the southern Appalachians, a little bit of snow from West Virginia down into Western Virginia, Kentucky, North Carolina, Tennessee, even to the Cumberland Plateau could get a light coating of snow. But across the west, this is where things get interesting. So now we're into Sunday. We'll see a few rain showers trying to move here through parts of Tennessee and Kentucky. But look what's going on out west. This is not a few rain showers. We've got heavy snow now moving into the Cascades, heavy rain too here across the coastal areas. And look, that heavy snow is even going to push inland into the Canadian Rockies. Lots of snow here as well as we get that upslope flow. So an interesting setup here across the northern Rockies and across the Intermountain West. Snow levels will drop to around 300 to 400 feet here along the coastal areas of Washington and Oregon. Snow amounts could be 2 to 3 feet in the mountains. Some areas could see more. Heavy snow now moving down into the Sierra as we move into Monday night and Tuesday. And then look what happens. That system moves eventually into the Four Corner states. So we're dealing with heavy rain and snow now as far south as Arizona and New Mexico. Colorado, looks like we're going to pick up quite a bit of snow with this. And then across the east, the transition starts. I'm going to back it up. We've talked a lot about this storm across the west. It's just going to again drop quite a bit of rain, feet of snow in the mountains, but across the east, a big warm up on the way. As we see that warm air moving north ahead of these waves of warm air, we'll see a few showers along the warm fronts that will likely be pushing to the north and east ahead of the system. And then this is where things get really interesting next week. We got that big storm across the west, a big trough moving through. You really want it to be tilted further to the west for severe weather, but this is an interesting setup. Still too early, I think, to make the call. But Wednesday, Thursday looks very interesting. There could be severe weather here across, say, from Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. And then as the storm moves east, we're talking about the deep south. And I don't know that I would rule out maybe even the mid-Atlantic. Something to keep an eye on. If you've not subscribed to the channel, I'd love to have you be part of the community, so hit subscribe. I'll be following this storm next week for sure. We'll be breaking down the severe outlook, the severe components. We'll be looking at some of the dynamics as we head into severe weather season, so I hope you'll stay tuned. Next week will also be interesting for winter weather. Remember those winter surprises I talked about? How about this? A deep area of low pressure looks like it's going to move toward the Great Lakes. Wherever this thing goes, I think on the north and west side of it, you're going to see some heavy snow. Still too early to talk totals because the track is still to be determined. And then behind it, a cold rush of air once again. We start to warm up across the central and western United States behind this trough. And then look at this, another system moving into the Pacific Northwest. Now this is the GFS, same time period heading into late next week. It's got the idea of that big trough digging in. I don't think that's the question. The question is, where will low pressure develop? Now it's a little bit different looking. We've still got time to iron all of this out, but it's trying to put that snow a little bit further to the east. Places like Indiana, Ohio, maybe even parts of western New York and Pennsylvania, and then the cold air moves in behind it. We are seeing the storm, but tracking it is going to be the key. We're talking about 7 days out, guys, for energy that is still way back here across Russia. And I would argue that some of that energy would be, probably out near Hawaii at this point. So a long way to go. I'll be tracking it, though, as we go through the next couple of days. Now let's look at temperatures because we will see a huge swing in the numbers, 50s and 60s, as we head into Wednesday across many of these areas for the central and eastern United States. Cold, though, still here across the Northeast, seasonably cold, I guess you could say. Temperatures really struggling to get out of the 30s and 40s. Heading into Thursday, slightly warmer, I guess. We're back into the 40s here, 50s and 60s here across the south. But here comes the cool down as we head into the weekend. There's that cold air moving in. So as we get into Saturday, we're back in the teens and single digits here across northern New England, 20s and 30s, widespread here across many parts of the mid-Atlantic. So from, say, Virginia all the way back into Ohio, 20s, 30s, and 40s, and well below freezing once you get up, say, north of Ohio into Michigan into northern New England. We've got single digits and teens, and we'll be below zero probably by the time we get to Sunday morning. So some pretty chilly air here across the mid-Atlantic. It's a quick glancing blow because look what happens heading into next week. Boom, here comes the warmth once again, and this could be some serious warmth out ahead of that system, again, that I was showing you guys that could bring that severe weather toward the middle part of next week. We certainly are warming the atmosphere up. You get the warm air getting close to 80 degrees. Look, here comes your front. Severe weather, anybody? Well, look behind this. These numbers here are trying to show up in the single digits and teens when you've got 70s and 60s here out ahead of the system. So a huge clash of the seasons showing up. That could fuel a big storm and maybe even severe weather too. Across the west, a little bit mild as we head into the weekend, but look, that's not going to last very long. Here comes the chill, pushing all the way down into the Four Corner states. Temperatures getting below zero into the Intermountain West. And then there's that cold push of air colliding with that warm air that could bring the severe weather toward the middle part of next week. I promise I'll keep you updated. There's also a chance that, again, we get cold heading into March, not before we get very warm. I've got that outlook right here. If you've not seen it, I'll see you there.